Welcome, welcome. Thanks for hanging with us on Wednesday.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, we got a lot of cool stuff to cover with a pretty cool dude tonight. So we're gonna kind of get right into it. But just first, I know there are some new folks on tonight, so just a little bit of overview of what we're doing, what you got yourself into. It's a Zoom webinar, so you will only see David and I. That's to make the recording really clean and the audio really clean. But you can interact, and we do want to hear from you throughout the night. We got a chat button down at the bottom of your screen. You can chat up Jen, or you can throw in some banter like we've had the last couple times. And then for questions, there's a separate Q&A button that you can use. Ask your questions, get them in. If you get them in via the Q&A, we're going to get through as many as we can. Jen's managing that, and we'll work through that list. We got about an hour, so we're going to try and wrap pretty closely to 8 p.m. But if it's juicy and we're going, and David can hang for a couple minutes, we'll try and stay on. And then lastly, recording. So we will fire off a recording shortly after we get it all uploaded and cleaned up. But that's kind of it. So without further ado, let's welcome our guest. And well, first, let me just say thanks to everybody for coming along. This is our fourth one. Yes, fourth one, and it's been awesome. So, and I think you're gonna really enjoy what we got going on tonight. So yeah, like I said, let's welcome him. Guide, fly tire, just a generally pretty cool dude. Minnesota native, currently in Wisco guiding, and doing some other cool things. David Holmes, what's up, man? Welcome.
Yeah, what's up? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, brother, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Real good. Looking forward to talking about some bugs.
Yeah, man, it's kind of crazy too. We just got all those bugs in the other day. They were posted on the site. Yep. I've been oohing and on over them for like 48 hours. So we're gonna definitely get into a lot of stuff. We don't have a huge theme, but I think there's a lot of unique things that David's got going on with some of these patterns, and we definitely want to get into that. But I actually did get a few questions from folks beforehand, so fire those over, keep them coming. We're gonna get through them all. But first, man, I want to talk about this. Let's just get this out of the way. I want to talk about the mega glider. So just first and foremost, why don't you just explain to I'll hold it up. If you got one, hold it up. But why don't you explain to everybody like what this is? You can't even conceptualize how big it is. This one's like 18 inches. Yeah, talk us through it. Talk about the boat.
Yeah, so the whole like kind of basis behind the Mega Glider was just a need for a giant fall bait. Like the standard big stuff like that 12 to 13 inch, which is still big. But a lot of times in the fall, it doesn't get it done. And I mean, when those big fish are actually eating, I really don't think you can present too big of a fly. So yeah, I went ahead and kind of my basis for all my flies now is a really long front shank. So whether that's on my standard glider, which is this, the front shank is like 4 to 4.5 inches. So I basically just scaled that up a ton. And for the Mega Glider, that front shank is, I think, 6.25 inches for the full front length. Just one solid shank, and it's like tied on these. Yeah, they're big. So it's tied on that, the full 6.25.
And clearly, you're making those your own, unless you're getting them from somewhere. But
I'm just making all my own, and I've tried experimenting on how to tie them on hooks, and I haven't found a good way to get 6.25 inches of length on hooks with a combination of shanks or whatever.
Well, it would change that movement too, because you got this like almost stubby tail.
Yep.
That kind of, I mean, I've seen how it works in the water, and it definitely would change some things. What kind of wire are you using to make shanks?
Yeah, so I just go off the 0.051 stainless steel wire. I get it in the foot-long sections.
Yep.
So for most of my stuff, I try to not waste any wires. So for my standard glider shank, I start with a 6-inch piece, and 6 inches gets bent down to exactly the 4.5, which from the hook version is the exact same size. And yeah, I mean, the .051, I know a lot of guys who use .061. I personally haven't found a need to go that heavy. If anything, I'll like reinforce it with a straight piece tied on top of it.
Yep. Yep.
Just for a little extra rigidity, but I mean, it's a muskie. It's going to bend up a shank no matter what. Yeah, .051, the Boggs tackle maker for the shank
Yeah.
bender.
Oh, yeah.
Love those.
Get one of those if you don't have one and you're looking to make shanks.
Definitely get one.
We're gonna hopefully have some here soon, but they're sweet.
Yeah.
So you kind of spoke about it, and we're gonna just talk about this fly for a little bit. But you made a couple points there: shank, hook. A variety of your patterns are shank only or hook. Can you talk me through kind of what are you fishing? What are you seeing?
So right now I'm at a real in between stage with that. I like shanks a lot, and at this point I'm really fishing 50-50. So I like shanks a lot. Like this is one that's produced really well, all on shanks with VMC inlines hung off of it. And I mean it's the exact same fly on this one, tied on hooks. In terms of movement, there's no difference. The only disadvantage I've found with the shanks is snagging timber, rocks, whatever it may be.
Just because there's
so at this point,
riding.
Yeah. At this point, my main decision for that is what kind of structure I'm fishing around. If I'm fishing a giant pool that's got nothing but a big sand drop in it, I'm probably going to run shanks. But if I'm fishing around a ton of laydowns and stuff and I want to be able to put a fly in there, I'm probably going to run hooks on it.
Yep. That's a super interesting perspective. Yeah.
In terms of hookup percentage, I really haven't found too big of a difference. I think as long as you're using proper hooks when you're tying on hooks, I really haven't seen too much of a difference. On mine, I'm running a 5/0 spinnerbait in the back, which is a fantastic hook. And then the front hook for a little shorter shank is the 6/0 Kona Big Game Carnivore.
Yep. And these are the hooks you're running on your hook platform.
Yep, these are the ones on the hook platform. So there's the 5/0 spinnerbait up front and the 6/0 Kona.
Yep.
So like I said, as long as you're running big enough hooks when you're tying on hooks, I don't think there's a huge difference in hookup percentage.
Yep. Okay. That's super interesting. I
in
know
terms of keeping a fish.
Yeah.
What was that?
Go ahead.
In terms of keeping a fish on during a fight, like a really hot fish will sometimes just get all fired up and start spinning the leader and stuff. I think the shanks do have an advantage on that one. That fish just doesn't have much of a way to leverage itself out. But half the time you're catching a muskie, it eats at the boat and it's in the net within 20 seconds.
Yeah. Yep.
So
plus as you I'd love to hear you kind of talk about some of the other hooks and your hook selection for your shank flies, because at least when I'm fishing shank flies, I agree with what you just said. But one of the other small advantages is I can get into kind of stickier, more stinger, octopus. Brad talked about this a couple of weeks ago, style hooks that you wouldn't be able to tie a fly directly onto. What are you using? You mentioned a couple earlier, the VMC. What else?
Yeah, so I've been playing around with them a lot. The best one I've found so far is the VMC inline in a 3/0. It's kind of tough to see there.
Yep. With that funky hook eye.
Yep. And that hook eye, because when you hang them off of a shank, so your loop is in line or parallel with the shank of the hook. When you put a split ring on it and then a non-inline hook, that hook is forced to be pointing to one side. And typically, I mean, a big muskie at least is going to eat rolling from the bottom and eating the head. It can be angled or whatsoever. So if you have that hook pointing off, so it's kind of tough to show on the video, but say the hook point is pointing off towards you and that fish comes from the backside, you're not going to have much of a chance to get a hook into that fish. So that inline with that vertical eye fixes that super efficiently. And the VMC inlines have a pretty sweet little beak on them. They got a real nice gap to them.
Yep.
So
And are
that's
you?
the best one I've found.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I haven't heard that perspective on shank stuff. Are you so on the Mega Glider, you got
Mhm.
the little loop that you tied into your shank. You're obviously putting a hook on that, and then are
Yep.
you running the second hook off the right here? You got a split ring.
Yep. Just right off that back.
Two hooks. Yep.
Yep.
Are you for your shank hooks for the hooks you use on your shanks? Are you typically kind of hook point down, or are you ever riding that the opposite way?
I'm almost always hook point down.
Yep.
I've seen very few fish eat in any other way than somehow trying to get to the head of the fly. Occasionally you get like a little fish that'll nip a tail, um, or a very late fall fish that'll come in on an 8 and just kind of, do that lazy like nipping thing on the back of the fly that we all hate. But the majority of full committal eats are going to be towards the head of that fly, or at least from the side, T-boning it or something. So yeah, hook point down,
Yep.
almost always.
Yeah. Our boy Alex got a question here about your split rings. What kind of split rings are you using?
I use the Owner Zowire split rings in a size 5. Um, you could go bigger. I haven't found a need to go bigger.
Yeah.
That's
Well, especially with those hook eyes you've
that
got.
size.
With those hook eyes, yeah. With those hook eyes that you just showed, you can get. I think there's some other good hooks that you have to go size. You got to go smaller
Hmm.
to get it through the hook eye, but
Yep.
it's also not that. It's that flat hook eye. It's not that tipped up one. That's
Yep.
cool.
And I will say the other hook that I've done really well on is the Gamakatsu spinnerbait trailer hook. So it's the ones with the little that come with the package with the little rubber tube in it that for like spinnerbaits. And they got that big eye on them. So those ones I run on 2 split rings if I'm gonna run them. So that's like there's a big hole, no snags. Fish are maybe not wanting to commit fully. They're nipping at it, have that hook hanging a ways down.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
done well.
That makes sense. No, that's really interesting. I haven't. I personally haven't heard anybody talk about it that way. Like just, I think you're getting a lot of people that are kind of shank only or hook
Hmm.
only. And you all right over there?
Yeah, good.
Little, little foot cramp mid webinar. But kind of using them both as tools when the
Yeah.
right situation arises.
Yep. Yep.
I
mean, with the majority of muskie, there's no right answer to a lot of stuff.
it's a sacrifice no matter how it shakes out. I kind of blew right past it, but what on the glider and the mega glider, I've seen a few of these in action, but what was kind of the design thesis? What were you like? You mentioned big, but was there any movement that you were looking for, or
Yeah, so the majority of my flies these days are based off of gear baits or lures. So like the glider was based off of like a phantom glide bait. The deep dancer was based off of a bulldog. Just actions that have been producing for long before fly fishing was a thing. Um, the Optimus swine was one that really wanted me to get a big fly to do what that fly does.
Yep.
Just that consistent back and forth, giving the fish every opportunity it needs to eat that fly.
Yep.
So yeah, that was kind of my main design process.
Yep.
Yeah, because I mean, as whatever your views are on gear fishing, you can't deny that those lures have worked.
Well, and it's data, right? It's like you were saying, you can kind of pick apart, glide baits and suics and all that stuff and see what's kind of working. I definitely use that. I don't know about you, but when you're like, there's a lot more like musky gear reports in season,
Yep.
and like, oh, the suics are working. I'm using that and trying to adjust. I don't know
Oh, yeah.
how you. Sounds like probably the same.
Big time.
Yep. Anything else you want to talk about on the mega glider or the glider? I just think these are really sweet.
Yeah.
They're so fishy.
I will say the one other thing that's nice about them and that you can really tweak with them is the type of line you're running with them. For most of the season, I'm running the intermediate Sync 2, Sync 3, the triple density from SA.
Yep.
Um, that's kind of a nice sweet spot in between the other two options, which are the Sonar Full Intermediate, which is also a great line, and the Sonar Sync 357. The 357 I run primarily in the fall, the intermediate primarily right in the spring, and then that I-2-3 kind of fills in the gaps. But with these flies,
And just sorry, David, just so our
yeah,
viewers can map this on to, you're mainly fishing rivers, right? Like some of the
yeah,
big yep,
90% rivers.
yep,
Yep. Um, and then with those lines and these flies, on that full intermediate, that fly will sit up in like the top foot of the water column, pretty much the entire retrieve. If you like let it sit for 15 seconds, it can get down to 5 feet. But typically in the spring, those fish are looking up anyway. You'll see a lot of suckers dancing around up top. You'll see red horse eating caddis hatches. Um, and with that lighter line, that fly will do nothing but just straight side to side. As soon as you start putting a little more weight on the head of that line, you'll notice that if you let the line drop while the fly is sitting and then you strip, the fly will take a nosedive. And then on the next strip, it'll pop back up. And then if you pull it again slowly, you can get it to start walking. So you can get super creative with how you're retrieving that fly. And like a lot of times, even with the 357, there'll be a hole on the other side or on the bank with a piece of structure in between the bank and the boat. And I want to hunt that fly from the bank to that structure, bring it over the structure and drop it back.
yep.
And with those triple densities and the heavier lines, as soon as you get to that structure with a two-hand rod, you can just pop it up. And that fly will actually follow the line somewhat and pop up over the structure, keep rising. And then once you're on top of it, you can just start that walk again.
That's
So yeah.
that's a really important point that I just want to like double click on because
Mhm.
I think we could, you know, like my double click saying, like these fly, even take just talk about a Buford. Like a Buford does not just swim one way. Line, weight, speed, like it all
All
shifts. So I think that's something to take into account for people when they're looking for presentations. You change up the line weights, and it's going to change up the movements. I was actually with Alec when I first saw these gliders swimming, and he was just like really aggressive strips, and it would just, you know, it was just this perfect kind of. It wouldn't like open up and turn back, but it would just kind of flip up, flip down.
If I remember right, he was fishing that on a full intermediate, I think.
I want to say Sonar Musky, but he would know. He's here. He can weigh in.
Yeah. And the last point I'll make on the gliders is that one thing I really hate in a fly, and that a Buford will often do, if tied too dense, is what we call prairie dogging, where on every strip it just kind of like bumps up, bumps up, bumps up. And you never really get that fly hunting until it's like 2/3 of the way back to the boat. With the gliders, tying them the way I do, it's relatively sparse, keyword relatively, because they're a super dense fly, up until the last 3 reverse ties. And even those are not a huge amount of bucktail. It's just really long butt ends put in there. So you can get that fly hunting within 2 strips.
Yeah.
Or if you're willing to be a little bit patient after it hits the water and give your line a second to get down, it can be hunting right away.
Yeah. So, I noticed that as well, just looking at them. Like, it's definitely an impressive amount of bucktail, I will say that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not that super buoyant, floaty, you know, belly hair or whatever on top. Which, yeah, again, I think, for viewers, like something to experiment. There's no real right way to do a Buford head. Some people do them once. Some people do fucking 5 wraps. Some people are stacking. It all is going to end up differently. But let's take a little.
They all catch fish on some level.
Yeah, let's take a little pause. We got like at least 3 questions here. Okay, we'll hit these quick. What material are the heads of the gliders?
So it's all bucktail. It's essentially a bulkhead, but a reverse tied bulkhead. I think in Popovic's book, a bulkhead technically is all straight tied, leaving the butt ends in, kind of tapering it up. It's a little, grab a different fly.
Yeah, you can. I don't know if you can see it on mine, but you can see the color shade just change a little bit.
There's an easy one.
Yep, bingo.
So it's reverse tied with really long butt ends left in, and essentially as I go up that front shank, starting about halfway through it, I start to leave the butt ends longer and longer as I go up. So you end up with a density taper going down the head of the fly and then into the tail, which is just standard reverse tied.
Yep.
So you get that enough bulk to turn it and enough streamlined, slimmer profile to let it glide.
Yep.
Yep.
While I'm flipping through these questions here, you mentioned Popovic. Who kind of else is in your repertoire of inspiration or knowledge? Kind of how did you?
Yeah, I mean Popovic's a huge one, obviously. I mean anytime you reverse tie anything. I'd say another one is Gabe Schubert, a more secretive character in the muskie world, but
Won't find him on social media, but you'll find him.
Yeah, good luck. But his stuff is good, and it's a lot of the same ideas that I've kind of picked up in mine, where it's just glide bait style flies, tapered heads, very fishable, very eatable. So yeah, those would probably be the two big ones.
Yep, sweet.
I mean, the Buford is a great fly. I fish occasionally Buford heads on some of my glider platforms, like that one. That's just a glider platform, but with a Buford head.
Well, and that mega glider even kind of.
Yeah, and I needed to put a Buford head on that to offset the size of that fly.
Right.
I tried the reverse tied bulkhead on that, and I couldn't get it to turn right.
Yep, and it's probably just the weight or the size. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
A couple other quick ones. I got them right here. Leader length for mega glider, or maybe talk about how you think about leader length in general.
Yeah, that's a good question. My setup for about 70% of the year is 2 feet of 40-pound fluoro or mono. I personally haven't found an advantage to either. And then I rig all my flies with wire attached to them. Yep. And then I just throw a loop to loop. So a real big loop on the 40-pound, run the fly through it. In the spring, if I'm fishing those full intermediates and I really want to let a fly just kind of dance around, because a lot of times in the spring we'll find that those fish will eat after that fly's been sitting motionless on a piece of structure for, up to 30 seconds. So I'll even run as much as like a 5 or 6 foot leader to the foot of wire in the spring on a full intermediate. In the fall with the mega glider, just to get that fly to turn over properly, I'm usually running about a foot of 40-pound, maybe a foot, straight to the leader. So relatively simple. I don't taper down. I don't do any direction.
Yeah, I think the takeaway I'm getting and others is for the bigger flies, you gotta.
Yep, bigger fly, shorter leader. Yep. And you could throw the mega glider with a 6 foot leader. It wouldn't be fun.
Well, how fun is it casting in general? I see a few comments in here. Bring a spare rod when fishing the mega glider. Water loading the mega glider. I love it.
Yeah. So it's like any big musky fly. You can say you can cast it, which you can overhand cast it, or I guess it'd be open loop casting it. But if you're doing it all day, I'm water loading it. I won't get into that whole that whole discussion, but I think water loading is a super valuable tool when fish are really on a fly of that size.
Yeah, I do too. If anyone, I'm sure a lot of folks, if we're on the Musky Facebook, deep philosophy. That's about as deep as Musky guys will get philosophically. But yeah, how else are you gonna throw something like this all the time? Yeah. And at the same time, you don't need to water load a 6-inch fly in spring. Either.
But you totally can if you want.
Yeah, you totally can.
Yeah.
So I did get a question. Would a 10 weight be able to handle a fly like that first one? I think you're talking about the mega glider. I would say hell no, but David, weigh in.
Yeah,
it's probably strong. It's probably like a soft no.
It's a soft no. You could definitely do it. I mean, I've
Especially
been.
the right 10.
What was that?
Especially with like the right 10.
Yeah, I mean, you get a good like saltwater blank 10 weight that's got a ton of backbone, and you're willing to just be patient with it. Yeah, you can cast that. Um,
Yeah. So say
Honestly, the
10 was
the
meant to.
reason I don't throw 10 weights is just for fighting fish,
Yep.
not necessarily for fly size, but
You just think you're a little undergunned.
yeah, it's just, I mean, for the majority of muskie, you're gonna see a 10 weight will be fine. I mean, like a 35-inch muskie on a 10 weight is a ton of fun. But in the off chance that you hook into like a 46, it's not going to end well. And not to say you can't do it. I know a ton of guys who have caught fish of that caliber on 8 weights even. But I think it's just better for the fish to use a big rod that can get it in the net fast. And
Yep.
yeah,
Well, and kind of like, if you're like you said, if you're on a water, like we got a little pond over here, they don't get bigger than 40.
yeah,
So maybe that, but if I'm, fishing trophy water, you should be
yep,
expecting to encounter big
yeah,
ones.
yeah. Be prepared for the biggest fish that you could think of in there.
Yep, especially throwing 20 inches of meat like this.
Mhm.
We're getting a little off topic from fly tying, but I'm sure
Yeah.
I find it interesting. What are you throwing typically? Like what's your rod choice for some of these flies?
Yeah. I've been loving the Limit Creek Force M1. I got a couple of them now. That's kind of my go-to rod. I got a couple of those Echo Musky rods on the way. Sounds like they've been hung up in customs for a while, but I'm excited about that one.
Yep, yep.
Yeah,
I know. I haven't heard anything about them yet because no one's really got their hands on them.
yeah, no one. I think that'll be a good rod. I fished the TFO Essex 12 weight for a long time and broke it a heck of a lot of times.
Yeah.
uh, it's a great casting rod, but yeah, just not enough backbone to be an everyday rod.
Yep. I know they're trying to fix that with the new one, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll have to wait and see. That's cool.
Yeah, the Limit Creek is my go-to.
Go to
Yep.
made right in Minnesota too. Definitely. We
Can't
got
beat
it in the
that.
shop. We're not going to talk about rods much longer because we want to get into more fly tying stuff. But definitely a good stick. Well, what else, Scott? What happens if you purchase a Holmes fly but it's caught in a tree? Do you get a replacement?
Yeah,
That's not in the Muskie full warranty. You got to take that up with the tree. I don't
we
know
might
how.
be able to work something out, but
Yeah. What is your opinion on using weed guards on flies like this?
yeah, I like the idea of weed guards. I rarely fish water, or I should say, I rarely fish sections of water that have muskies sitting in weeds. Most of the rivers I fish just don't have a ton of weeds most of the year. And if they do, it's like mid-July when you probably shouldn't be fishing for them anyway.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
so I've never really found a need to. If I get into a situation where a weed guard would help, I have no problem tying in a piece of 100-pound mono or something
Yeah.
as a.
And I don't know, just to answer it from a different angle too. I agree with that. I think I know roughly the areas you're fishing, and they definitely run less weedy than other spots, especially
Yeah.
lakes, especially some of the spots a little farther east. So
Mhm.
given where you're at, it makes sense. If you're fishing a slop bed, like yeah, you might want to throw a weed
Yeah.
on there.
Yeah. And I
Got
know
it.
there's some spots on like the flambeau and stuff that get pretty choked up in the summer, and I know big fish sitting there. So for that scenario, yeah, a weed guard probably makes sense.
Speaking of weed guard type stuff, we did get a question somewhere about a PR 378, the gunner hooks. Have you tied anything on that yet?
I I got some of them. I struggle to feel comfortable with those.
I wanted to show you the one I tied, and then I kind of got too embarrassed to bring it on camera. I like tied it and was like, I don't know.
I think the idea is really cool.
Yeah,
And I
no,
think
there's
for pike flies and for bass flies, I think they'd work really well. I got the 6/0.
yep, those are big. Yeah.
And yeah, it's a big hook. It's a lighter wire than I would like. It feels strong, but it worries me a little bit. And the other problem I have with them is that I've seen very few muskie eat a fly straight from the back. and just in a scenario where this hook would actually be able to get good purchase on them. Like I said, I mean, like a big fish, 90% of the time is going to eat from the bottom and come up on it. And if you're looking at it from that way, so you got, I mean, this much material built up here, there's not a lot of purchase on that point. So for that reason, I probably won't use them for muskie. I've definitely tied some pike flies on them.
Yeah, no, pike and bass, at least for us. And there'll be situations, right? Sometimes when the conditions present itself and you are fishing the slop for them. But yeah, I've noticed that. And I just, there's a lot. I don't know about you. I can just pick a hook up and put some bucktail on it and it swims. When I pick up the PR 378, I feel like if Gunner saw what I was tying on that, he'd be like, "I'm not gonna weight balance." So
I'm gonna say I was a little intimidated by him too. I wasn't sure.
Me too. Yeah, definitely. Let's see what else we got. Yeah, I think I just saw the comment. Make sure ferrules are snug when fishing 4-piece rods and these big flies for sure.
Yep. If you can get a 1-piece, do it.
Yep. Not many of them available, but okay. What else? I'm all over the place here. Oh, we did get one. Does Mike Small? What's up, Mike? Thanks for joining. David, do you have any instruction videos on some of this? Are you planning on doing it?
I do not right now. I could definitely do it if there was interest in it.
Consider it interest. We'll get it. We'll get it going.
Yeah. Talking about tie-in videos, or?
Yeah, I think that the question was about the Mega Glider and the Optimus Swine. And just to be clear, the one we have,
Swine's not my bug.
Yeah. I was gonna just clarify that. The one we have here, I think that Dave mentioned, is the double nickel. The double nickel and the Optimus Swine were designed by Chris Willen. I think there are videos on. I've seen videos on them because I've seen the WWE Schultz Outfitters.
Oh,
so
yeah.
you can find some definitely on the Optimus Swine.
Yep.
And we'll stay tuned, Mike, for Mega Glider videos.
And yeah, quick correction on there. The Swine is an Eli Brandt.
Sorry.
There is a Chris Willen video and tying it from Schultz.
Yes, thank you. And Willen fishes it extensively, but you are
fantastic fly.
And we will be getting some Optimus Swines in a couple of weeks from Eli.
Buy those.
Yes. I just want to make sure we get all these. Derek had a question when we were talking about shanks. What are you using? Any other tools other than the bogs?
So kind of the main tools you really need for those are a pair of the round nose pliers. A pair of like flat ones help too, just in terms of gripping that wire. But yeah, so after you bend it, the Boggs tackle maker does everything except put that full loop in for the split ring. So for that, you just kind of gotta grab your shank, use your fingers, and twist it around.
Those round nose pliers are super handy though. Like I would definitely recommend adding that to the.
Yeah, they're pretty great.
Yeah. Well, let's kind of continue this theme on shanks and hooks. So we talked about the shank only platform. We talked about some of the hooks, but talk to me a little bit and talk to us about how you are connecting. Where was the one? Like on the Swine, you got 2 hooks and there are no shanks really in the fly.
Mm-hmm.
But you obviously have this point of connection. That's, I think a lot of people always have questions about, which is when I'm running double hooks like this and I want to keep it pretty small, how am I connecting hook to hook? So I'd love to hear you talk through too, like the evolution. I don't know if you started using wire or mono and then moved away from it and why, but talk us through.
Yeah, so I mean, the standard articulation has been wire for a long time. I personally I haven't lost a fish because of wire, but I've casted the back halves off a lot of flies. So before I lost a fish on it, I made the switch to shanks. But half the problem with the shanks is that when you tie it in, which is something I'm still trying to work out with the standard glider, you have this extra loop you got to tie around. And on the glider, it works out because you can use it as a brace to get your butt ends more flared towards the head and build a little more profile. But on the nickel, which is a relatively streamlined fly up until the head, there's just not a good spot for that loop to be right in here. So what I did is I basically took an 80 millimeter shank. It's one of these. That's how I
Yeah,
articulate them.
one of the big games or whatever.
Yep, just an 80 millimeter big game, and you cut it in half. I wish I had one to demonstrate this with. I already cut them all in half. But you cut it in half, and then with that Boggs tackle maker, you essentially just bend the end that's a little bit longer at an angle. So that way, I mean, this sits on the side of the hook, right on the side of the hook. And that way those two shanks of wire lock it down really well on the side of the hook. The little post keeps it from sliding out, and you end up with just kind of the perfect little loop off the back.
Yeah, I get it. I was just
Yep.
about to ask the post. If it would get pulled, it's going to hit that post.
Yep. Because for a while I was like, oh, I'll just cut the loop off, but then the problem is you're relying on basically super glue and GSP to hold the weight of a muskie from pulling it out. So that little post basically just stops any of that from possibly happening. I do trim it after I tie it in. I just kind of take a pair of bolt cutters and zip it off as low as I can, but a lot better than tying around a full eye. Lets it be more streamlined, super, super strong. Yeah.
Yep.
Really nothing that can go wrong there.
Yeah, and I think that's like, I haven't fully made the switch. I've been using single strand wire. So there's some wire that I wouldn't recommend at all. I just think your fly is going to decapitate itself before you get a muskie to eat it, and then who knows. But yeah, this setup, it just feels bulletproof, and it's all about that confidence on the water. You're not worrying about another thing that go wrong. I definitely recommend that. This is good stuff.
Yeah.
How are you? I got a question for you, and maybe others don't find this interesting, but I just suck at it. What's the give me some tips and tricks on tying good nickel heads?
They're tricky. Those eyes do not like being tied around. But essentially, so how I go about is it's kind of tough to see here, but there's enough room for one spin of hair in front of the eyes and enough room for one stack of hair behind the eyes. So that last reverse tie right here is real close to those eyes.
Okay. And are you putting the eyes on after?
I'm putting the eyes on after the last reverse tie. Yeah, because trying to push bucktail back behind those eyes is not fun. And then I'm basically just putting one stack of bucktail butt hair on the top, one on the bottom, and then just a spin in front. And for that spin in front, that's kind of the tricky one because those eyes don't want to let you rotate it around the hook. So I do the classic like 2 loose wraps, snug it a little bit, and then I just sit there and spin it around with my fingers. One of these is super helpful. Just poke all that hair out and get it spun around the eyes until you're happy with it.
Yep.
Tighten it down. Take your fingers or I'm sure a Cohen hair tool or something would be great for it, but just jam it back into that eye socket. And then if you got room for it, you can tie another one on. But yeah.
No, there's a lot of bucktail on here already. That looks good. And these are for folks interested, the interesting thing about Chris's double nickel is that's the aluminum sea eyes in there. That's not like glue on or stick on eyes. That's the aluminum eyes. So it gives it this really interesting head weight. Yeah, if you have one, show it to us.
Yeah, so it kind of, the best way I can describe is it equals out the buoyancy of the essentially Buford head. So instead of that prairie dog, you get that nice still buoyant head, but it swims and then raises and then drops. A lot like a dying sucker does. So yeah, they're just they're the size XL. Hairline makes them.
And I think it's the aluminum. When you look at these eyes, they look huge. They look like big dumbbells, but they're actually fairly light, given that they're aluminum. Compared to tiny, they're probably lighter than like a quarter millimeter lead dumbbell eyes. But yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
We did get a couple questions that I skipped over. I don't know, you kind of answered this, but just to hit it, we had two ask for the shank. When you're tying the shank in to the hook, why the side and not the top?
Yeah, so a lot of that is because of, so you could tie it on the top if this eye was rotated the other way. So essentially, when you tie this in, having the two bars of shank flattens it out against the side of the hook. If you were to tie it on top, then you're relying on, I mean, it just wouldn't be straight. You end up with a back half that's tilted one direction or the other.
Well,
So
and it's
essentially what you're trying to do, and that's how I did it with wire too, is tie one piece of wire on basically on top of each other on the side of the hook.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and it moves a little bit. I've played, if you have it on top and you got two effectively cylinders resting on each other,
Exactly.
they're just gonna move.
Yeah.
Pretty good. All right, let's see what else I think we hit most of those. Norm.
Oh boy.
Norm wants to know who you think is the most talented muskie angler in the Midwest, and specifically why you think it's Norm. But you can sit on that one. Maybe we'll answer that one on Instagram later this evening. Yeah, we'll do a poll.
There's a few fish that make me think that might not be Norm that I've seen pop off at the raft this fall. But
yeah, there you go. There you go. Shots are being fired. Thank you for using the question tool for that question too, Norm. That was we made sure we get that one. Yeah. Wow, we got a lot of Davey talking about using shanks. Yep, we hit that one. Yeah, thank you. Nathan corrected that. Best eyes for gluing to those aluminum sea eyes.
Yeah, so it's the I personally really like the just the standard big fish eyes, but the problem with them is they're a little big for them, so you gotta take a pair of scissors and trim the outside of them. But the living eyes, I believe the 8mm.
8.5. Yep.
8.5. Yep.
Because they're both made. Yep. They're both.
Yep.
They're perfect for each other. Yep.
Yeah. Those fit in there really well. But I do love the giant solid black pupils on the big fish eyes. So I'll use it quite a bit.
I've done it before. They're not as durable, but you can take a 10 millimeter eye, and you can effectively try and glue it to that outer rim of the CI.
Yeah.
So you don't
I think I did that too, but they fell off pretty quick. Yeah, exactly. This is what I mean, that's the trimmed.
Okay. Oh, that's
you really can't tell it.
People. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's sweet.
Yeah, those living eyes fit in there nice.
Are you getting shout outs for your Miller Lite sign in the background?
Oh yeah.
So these are good. These are really good, and I just want to do a quick time check. Yeah, we're all right. Mark has a question. Do you cover your eyes with UV after you glue them?
I don't. I think that little recess in those aluminum CIs, plus quite a bit of Loctite liquid. I've never had one come out of a set of aluminum CIs.
And they're nestled within bucktail too.
Yeah, so it's like a double layer of protection. I mean, I've fished them until the aluminum CIs are bent out and sharp as heck from getting hit on rocks, and the eyes are still in there. So I don't. The only ones I do are on the deep dancers. I do cover that whole head in a Loon UV or epoxy, depending on how much time I got.
Yep.
Yeah, and part of that's for weight, part of it's for durability.
Yep.
Yep.
Another custom shank up front. We didn't talk a lot about this, but Deep Dancer, he's got 60-degree bend.
Yep.
60-degree bend. What's this in the tail? Is that a little SF blend or a little?
Yep. It's a little SF blend, tinsel flash, hairline half saddle.
Yep.
Yeah.
There you go.
Stuff. And then the weight up front of those is interesting. It's actually perks of working at a bait shop. It's a Neko weight, so it's made to stick into wacky rigs for bass fishing, and it's essentially just a long piece of tapered lead.
And you keep that in there.
What was that?
You keep that in there when you're tying on that shank.
Yep.
Oh,
yep.
Pretty cool. I didn't know.
And then I do wait until the end to bend it, because then if you don't, then you can't use a pen to push any tail back, and it's
right.
infuriating to tie. But yeah, those 1/8 ounce or 1/4 ounce Neko weights, are really, really nice to tie in and tie around, as nice as they can be.
Yep. Yep. Agreed. Wu-Tang eyes. Yep. A couple people talking about your nickels. Can we talk about color schemes?
I like that question.
Yeah, let's double dip on this one.
Oh, you almost said double click?
I did, but that wouldn't have been the appropriate use of double click. So let's talk about color schemes, and then I want to come back and talk about sizes throughout the season of flies, because these are all big. But talk about like what's your preference? What actually first talk about like what's your opinion on color? Does it matter? Then what's your preference, and kind of talk us through that.
So first of all, I don't think color matters a whole lot. My view of it is always like fish whatever you got confidence in. I mean, no matter who I have in the boat, if they look at a fly and they're like, I think pink's going to be the color, it's like, great, here's a pink fly. Personally, I really like what I call bright naturals. So your camels, your pastel yellows, your creams, that pastel orange to some extent, that's bordering on just plain bright.
Yep. But even this is your red horse sucker color, and it's still there's not dark olives and dark browns, it's tans and light olives.
Yep. Yeah. It's more visible while still being supernatural. This is a nice example of it. So it's white, camel, pastel yellow, and just a little bit of brown. And I mean, for all natural colors, it glows. So that's personally what I have the most confidence in. That being said, I mean, I fish a lot of bright pink stuff too, or a lot of chartreuse and white.
Yep.
I like brights personally.
That was like a baseball
bright naturals.
Holy what was that? I said that fly looked like a baseball bat. Holy shit.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Yep, that makes sense. Are you changing it up at all based on conditions, weather, water, clarity? I mean, is that
to
just
an extent, yeah. Confidence? Throughout the season, I mean, the peaches and cream, that pastel yellow and pastel orange, is kind of a consistent producer. Pastel yellow and camel is a consistent producer. In the spring, I really love pink and bright orange. That kind of segues into that next topic about fly size throughout the year. But in the spring, my go-to fly is a 7-inch single hot pink or hot orange Buford, a sparsely tied Buford. So it's not prairie dogging as we talked about, but
on a hook.
Yep, just on a hook.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, yeah, I like to keep it simple. If the water's super, super dirty, I'll throw an extra bright fly or an extra dark fly. But yeah, most of the time I'm running a bright natural, something that's visible.
How does your size progression work throughout the season? Is it pretty standard? Is it,
Yeah, I mean, as standard as it can be. Obviously, there's scenarios where still in the spring, I mean, you're going to throw a big fly at a hot fish or something. But yeah, spring starting out with 6 or 7-inch flies. Midsummer, I mean, that standard double nickel range really produces super well. Like that 9 to 10, even like an Optimus swine size range is perfect in the summer. Into the fall, I mean, yeah, it moves into the
crazy,
the stupid big stuff.
But they all still have their time and place. Like, I don't know about you, but at least for me, you made a good comment. I think the rule of thumb I agree with is spring, small, fall, big. But that doesn't mean I'm leaving the house without big stuff in spring. Yeah, and vice versa in fall,
Yeah, I mean, this fall, Norm and I found a pretty special stretch of water, and we were getting fish to eat these pretty consistently, but we were also getting fish to eat a whole ton of these, which is just a 10-inch, super simple red horse glider. So yeah, I mean, bring a bunch of flies, try a bunch of stuff.
Yep.
Fish will eat a whole bunch of different sizes throughout the year.
I love the banter, guys. That's why we did the chat. Is keep it firing. Keep it firing. Oh, here we go. Dustin Hines. What's up, Dustin? Thanks for joining us, man. He asked, are you using Nico weights or the tungsten nail weights or neither? I think this was in reference to that hook you showed us a moment ago.
Yeah, I'm using the Nico weights. Tungsten gets to be expensive when you're getting up into that quarter-inch range or quarter-ounce range. But I mean, it would totally work. Nail weights would work fine. I like the Nico weights because they got these like little. I think I'm actually out of them. Oh, no, there we go. They got little ridges built into them that can make tying around them super efficient. Because otherwise, it's a big thing to tie around. But that's the Nico weight.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it really lets you lock it in super well. It's got that tapered point on it. That's the best one I've found without dropping $40 on tungsten.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you could, I mean, folks out there, if you can, I think the important takeaway is the amount of weight and where
Yeah.
it is in the fly.
Yep. Like those deep dancers I sent you for the shop have an 1/8 ounce in them. So they're still relatively castable. The quarter ounce gets to be a lot.
Yep. Oh yeah, this is definitely 10 weight territory, 11 weight territory, no problem.
Yep. And that's bordering on Brammer's weight balancing system. So yeah, 1/8 ounce is super castable, still gets the fly to nose down, still gets a good roll to it. Yeah.
Yep. Mike Small just made a comment for folks that also works, ties in a section of solid and then solder for weight. So that there's the point is weight.
Yeah. However you add it, add some weight.
Yep. What do we got here? We got a few minutes left, so fire off some last questions. Let's get through some of these as they're coming in, and then we'll kind of wrap. We'll kind of wrap after we get through the questions. How's that sound, David?
Yeah, works for me.
So Nathan, what's up, Nathan? It's not necessarily related to flies, but I think we talked about it under the size theme.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to us about like throwing back to fish, like coming back to fish or throwing back to fish that might have been turned off. I think you made the comment that you're getting them to move on the big stuff, and then you had to size down to get them to eat. Is that?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, it really comes down to being able to read a fish. There's certain fish where you can tell by the way if you're throwing, say you're throwing a swine and you get a pretty good sized fish to come in behind it, but it never even looks like it really wants to eat it. It's just kind of checking it out. In that scenario, I'd throw a bigger fly at it. So I'd go something like a mega glider or like this is a T-bone style pig sticker, which is Luke's pattern. In that scenario, I'd throw a bigger fly, but it comes down to reading the fish. When you're throwing a bigger fly and you see a fish come in hot on it and it's doing the whole S turn thing behind it and comes up in the 8 and it won't commit to it. In that case, yeah, smaller fly.
It's right on it. Yep.
Yep, yeah, right on it. But that whole like
you get a fish. David, in that case, you do what?
So if the fish looks hot, I'd throw a smaller fly at it. If the fish looks like it's just kind of like checking out what's going on, like what is that? Swimming a few feet behind it.
It's not even
never really nips at it. Throw a bigger fly at it. Give it something to make it eat.
Yep.
Yep.
So it's kind of the opposite ends of the spectrum. You got kind of the potato chip Chris Willen theory, and then you got the just elicit them to get pissed off.
Yeah, and obviously there's shitty in between scenarios to that where you get a fish that like charges up on it and then stops.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you throw a few different flies at it, see what works.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Aaron wants to know why lake anglers are all just really horrible people. Oh, sorry, I read that wrong. Speak. Anyway, good to see you, Aaron. Thanks for joining, man. Two really good dudes right there, David and Aaron. That if you're looking to book a trip,
yeah,
Bob Mitchell's is the spot, right? Contact Bob Mitchell's and they can get in touch with either of you guys.
Yep, guide@bobmitchells.com.
There you go.
Trips are filling up.
Yep. We mentioned him earlier too in the chat. You can also hit up Mr. Norm. He's on with us tonight if you're looking for a little Wisco adventure.
Yep, little southern Wisco.
Yep. All right, we got a couple small ones, and then I think we'll turn it over to you to take us home. When you reverse tie, do you build a dam in front, or do you tie back over? Do you do the bullet tie, kind of tie back over the top?
I build a dam in front. I feel like for the bullet tie, in my experience, you have to have a super specific type of bucktail to make it really work.
Otherwise, it flares more.
Yeah, and I just maybe some people have the luxury of just having the perfect tail every time, but I'll take what I can get. So I'm gonna build the dam in front, and sometimes you get a ornery piece of tail that needs a little yanking around, but yeah, building the dam in front has been the most consistent.
Yep. Okay. GSP or what type of thread actually are you typically using?
Yeah, Vivus GSP what is it? 150. Specifically black.
Mm-hmm.
Got a different texture than the white stuff.
It definitely does. It does for all of them. It's like
Yeah,
no matter what. Yeah.
same with black bucktail. That black dye just does something.
Yep. I got a couple questions before we started. Oh, this was a good one.
Yep.
Do you have any of your style or recommend a style of fly for heavy current? And I think the specific question was kind of in reference to like some of the heavy flows on the Wisconsin
Yep.
or the lower chip is kind of what I
That's
was.
a great question. The nickel is a fantastic fly for that, especially if you just have a couple nickels with a more sparsely tied head. I That fly's nice because you can fish it in a variety of densities up front. So like this is one that's just, I mean, it's rock hard dense up front, and then this one is a lot sparser. Um, so yeah, fish different densities of heads for your flies, but fish something with weight. Double nickels are great. The deep dancer would be great. Um, a glider works super well. Throw it on a heavier line. Um, Trim down the head a little bit if you need to. I mean, if you really can't get down, take a sharp knife and just run it across the head a few times. Um, that'll trim it down. Yeah.
Yep. And this kind of comes back to the earlier conversation, like maybe shorten your leader. If you're
Shortly.
got a 6 foot mono leader, maybe dial that back to 2 or 3 feet and see
Yeah.
if it doesn't change it a little bit for sure.
And don't be afraid to get weird and throw like a quarter ounce dumbbell sinker off the eye of the hook. I mean, do what you got to do to get it down into that strike zone.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've even seen guys use some of the stuff. They'll put it up here on the back of the hook bend, so you can get weird with it. Is I think a great way of thinking of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
About weight. What is your favorite type of water to target spring muskie in?
Spring muskie, creek mouths. Short answer, creek mouths. Depending on where you are in the spring, like down here, southern Wisconsin, we open a month earlier, obviously. So fish are a lot closer to that immediate post spawn. So creek mouths are super, super key for us down here that time. But then as you move closer to June down here, or I guess it would be closer to mid-June in the northern zone, areas where those fish can just sit and recover and pick off a meal. They're not going to be in those super fast spring, or I mean summer ambush spots. They're not going to be in fast current. They're going to be in that greasy little back eddy that they can just sit all day. The sucker's going to swim by and they can grab it.
Yep. It's not like locationally specific, but I don't know about you, but I tend to look for spots that resemble fall structure, but just fish them a little bit shallower in the spring is kind of to David's point. Just hope that we don't. I don't know about you guys up there, but last year for the northern opener, they were still spawning. They were still paired up. So I'm hoping.
We have that a lot down here, and it's not necessarily a great situation, but yeah, if you see a fish paired up, don't cast at it.
Yeah. The good thing is they usually self-regulate. They're not going to probably eat. So good luck with that. Tell us about the state record buffalo on the fly. I don't know anything about that story.
Yeah, I mean, we got some crazy rough fish down here in La Crosse, and they tend to swim on sidewalks if the water gets high enough. So yeah, if you live in an area by a river and it's got a lot of delta water, fish it in the spring.
You might find them in your bathtub if it gets high enough too. What's up, Donald? I think we got one more here. We're at 8:02. We can do two more. We'll do two more. I'm going to answer Donald's and then hit me with one more if you have it, and then I'll turn it over to David to send it home. But what is your take on adding flash throughout the body Do you add flash in a specific spot on top? What are you looking
Yeah.
for?
I mean, flash I think is people overthink it a lot. I do a big clump in the tail, like this one's got just a big old ball of it back there. Throughout the body, I'm usually taking about 6 strands per reverse tie, tying it in on one side, spreading it out so it's on the bottom, wrapping to the top, and doing the other thing on the other side. So I like a 360 flash, big clump in the back, and then yeah.
Yeah. And you're mainly using tinsel or just standard Flashaboo?
Yeah, I'm old school with the flash. I like the standard tinsel flash.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I think it blends better with the bucktail. Every once in a while, I'll use like the Magnum stuff for the tail of the fly.
Yeah, I was just about to say, especially when
Yeah.
you see how you have it in the body, we'll have to get some of that in the shop because that
Yeah, it blends real
yeah,
nice with bucktail.
it's got a lot of bucktail protecting it too, so you're not super worried about it getting all gnarled. It's gonna happen, but
Yeah.
good question there. And yes, if you're paying attention, you can. Alec is gonna host the Zoom after this, the A bar. He'll be doing drink mixtures and all sorts of shit. What else, guys? Come on, we got to have one or two more here. I'm looking through my notes. Oh, I got one. It's not a question, but it'll kind of cue you up to talk about the year. So you got a new boat last fall, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Tell us like elevator pitch on that and kind of how that's what a client could expect from a trip on a boat like that this year.
Yeah, so I picked up a 16-foot Shawnee power drifter with a pretty sized up motor on it. It's a 60-40 Mercury jet, so it runs about 35 upriver, but at the same time super rowable, big back and front decks, super roomy, fit a ton of gear, real stable. So yeah, I mean if you're into boats moving fast while still being comfortable to fish out of,
On rivers. Yeah.
boat, yeah, on rivers. It's got a trolling motor for it.
How are you moving that boat down? Are you rowing it or trolling motor? A little bit of both?
Yeah, so last season was all rowing, which really still isn't too bad, even with the 60-40 on it. It rows real nice. But this season I got a Tarova for it, so that'll be nice for some of the different water that's not moving too quick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a sweet rig. I'm super jealous of that one. I guess kind of take us home, man. Tell us like what do you got? What do you got going on this year? I know there were a couple changes in how people can get a hold of you. I mentioned one earlier, but yeah, just if people want to fish with you, stay in touch about what's going on with your fishing season. How do we stay in the loop?
Yeah, so I'm in La Crosse right now currently, but this May I'll be making the move to St. Paul. So I'll be guiding everywhere up to Brainerd to the Croix to just a bit down south of the Twin Cities. So yeah, I mean if you want to get out musky fishing, bass fishing, trout fishing, I'll be doing a little bit of it all, carp fishing for that matter.
The La Crosse fishery just got significantly less pressured too, so that's good news.
There you go. Yeah. We'll see what Norm does with that one.
Yeah.
But yeah. So shoot me a text. You can get my number on my Instagram, David Holmes 08, website, davidholmesguiding.com. Yeah, shoot me a text.
And Muskie, obviously Muskie, we're talking about Muskie, but other
Muskie, smallies, trout, carp. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah. All right, if you're looking for group trips, hit up Bob Mitchell's fly shop. We got a big crew there that can do some pretty serious guide trip happenings. So
Sweet.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, dude, this was like we got through half my list, but that's been kind of the standard. This was awesome. And if questions do roll in as we're closing up, we'll try and ping you. Oh, we got 2 more while we're here. Okay. But this was awesome. We're going to answer these questions and then we're going to sign off. So everybody say thanks to David for joining. Thanks for everybody that signed in. I think I saw about 60 folks, which is really cool. But last 2 for you. Do you use rattles? And do you use treble or double frog hooks?
Oh boy, the treble question. Knew it was coming. Rattles,
Water
yes.
loading and trebles in one session without
That's
any
a
blood
scary
thinning.
topic.
Yeah.
Rattles, yes. I don't fish them in all my flies. Frankly, because they're just kind of a pain to tie in half the time, and they are usually gone after a few trips. But yeah, if you can, like the swine has a rattle incorporated in it in a super good way. Yeah, love them. Trebles. So yes, short answer, yes.
I think Dustin might have just asked that question and then signed off and just kind of wanted to pour some.
It's a scary move. Short answer, yes. The clipped frog treble, the Eagle Claw 374s. If you got a big rod, they're super effective. But they do need a big rod to be able to fully drive them home. Or you have to be a maniac with a strip set.
Yeah. And to your point earlier, you got to fish them in situations.
Yep. Exactly. If you're fishing around wood and like super tight structure, don't throw a treble on. Yeah. But if you know there's a giant fish there and you're throwing a true serious musky rod, the treble's going to be your friend. Yep.
More sharp pointy things ain't gonna hurt.
Exactly.
Dude, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Anything else you want to say to everybody? Otherwise, let's sign off and we'll post this guy this week. But this is awesome. I think we're gonna have to probably do this a couple more times because there's a lot more I want to ask you.
I love it. Yeah, had a great time and book trips.
Book trips. Check out his flies. Everybody have a great Wednesday. Thank you.
Yeah.
See y'all. Take it easy, David.
Yeah, see ya.